The National Desk, America's News Now.
Growing calls for a ceasefire in Gaza from around the world as civilians in Gaza now face another crippling threat.
Now the time is ticking where we will start seeing people starving to death.
What the United Nations Security Council is doing to force a surge of life-saving aid into the besieged enclave. Then thousands of Americans have been pardoned for using and possessing marijuana, what the president is now calling for from governors and local leaders. And is the economy heading in the right or wrong direction? It's the age-old question. Just ahead, what new data might indicate for your 2024 budget? This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Right now, the country is in the middle of the holiday travel surge, which peaked just today. We checked. Things are moving relatively smoothly so far for most of the country. There have been around 74 cancellations in terms of flights and 3,600 delays today. That's according to FlightAware.com. A little over 1% of flights have been canceled this year, the lowest in 5 years. On the roads, the busiest days will be tomorrow and next Thursday, according to transportation analytics tracker INRIX. Meantime, weather-wise, a slow-moving but strong storm drenching California after bringing widespread flooding. As you can see right here, more flooding still possible in the southern part of the state and in Arizona. The severe weather will head towards the southern Rockies tonight into tomorrow. Heavy rain is also forecast for parts of Texas and Kansas tomorrow. In Louisiana and Arkansas, you could see flooding by Sunday. New tonight, the Supreme Court will not be deciding quickly on whether former President Trump has immunity for his role in challenging the 2020 election results. Today, the justices denied special counsel Jack Smith's request to expedite the ruling. The case now heads to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, set to hear arguments on January 9th. The Supreme Court could take up the case after that court's decision. Amidst a war that has now exceeded 75 days against the backdrop of a conflict that has lasted 75 years, tonight, United Nations Security Council member states intervening to demand Israel take, quote, urgent steps to lay the groundwork for a sustainable cessation of hostilities. The resolution passing after negotiations that dragged through the entire week with disputes over the original language, which called for an immediate end to the hostilities. Now, ultimately, the U.S. backing Israel would not agree to that language. Instead, this resolution, which passed 13-0, really hones in on demands around aid delivery and extended humanitarian pauses. In the past, the U.S. voted against or vetoed resolutions that were critical of Israel's handling of the war. But tonight, a resounding consensus from the global community, just days after the death toll in the Palestinian enclave exceeded 20,000, according to health officials in Hamas-run Gaza. UN Chief Antonio Guterres speaking today about that vote and why it was necessary for global partners to send a strong message.
Over the last weeks and days, there has been no significant change in the way the war has been unfolding in Gaza. There is no effective protection of civilians.
The resolution on aid comes amidst an urgent need for food as Gaza slips deeper into a hunger crisis. While some aid trucks are making their way into the enclave from both Egypt and Israel, it's but a fraction of what's needed to serve the largely displaced population. Approximately all of Gaza's 2.2 million residents are now facing acute hunger. It comes as more somber news emerges on the ground that a hostage with dual American-Israeli citizenship has been confirmed to have died in captivity in Gaza. Gadi Haggai, 73 years old, was taken on October 7th during Hamas's attack on Israel. It's unclear how he died, but he was taken along with his wife, who is believed to still be alive. Before the news of Haggai's death, the White House said it believed 8 dual American-Israeli citizens were being held there. This as other American citizens, Palestinian Americans in Gaza, remain stuck there despite desperate pleas by the State Department to get out tonight, as Israel indicates it is widening its military operation in central Gaza. The White House feeling pressure from the family members of those who remain under the constant bombardment of war, some now suing the Biden administration for not doing enough to help them out of harm's way. The National Desk's Angela Brown has more.
So many family members, uncles, grandparents, children, many more trapped in Gaza.
When I do go to sleep, I dream about my family members being killed.
Right now, reality in Gaza is a hellish nightmare.
Just the other day, my aunt told me that the area that they live in is fully gone.
Airstrikes, a humanitarian crisis. Yasmin Alaga's family in the crisis intake system, running out of food and medicine.
Burak is at risk of losing a limb. Hashem is at risk of turning septic. They don't have any medication.
Thousands of miles away in Illinois, Yasmin, a Palestinian American, is trying to save them, including 2 cousins who are American citizens.
I have contacted every single one of my congressional reps multiple times.
Yasmin now suing the Biden administration, demanding the U.S. do more to evacuate them and all American citizens in Gaza.
It's meant to bring attention to the fact that Palestinian Americans trapped in Gaza are being left for dead.
For its part, the Biden administration is urging Israel to do more to spare lives.
The safety of innocent Palestinians is still of great concern.
But Yasmin has already lost too much.
I've lost over 100 family members already.
She says her family has been in Gaza for hundreds of years. Now she's dreaming of reuniting with them on American soil. Alive.
I imagine, running to them in the airport and hugging them so tight. They told me the first thing they want to do when they come here is try KFC. I imagine all of those little moments, and I truly, truly pray for them.
Here's the lawsuit that was filed right here. It's basically accusing the federal government of not doing enough to evacuate American citizens in a war zone. In this case, it's Palestinian Americans. It also says that Yasmin's cousins, their names have not been added to the exit list. Reporting in Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Angela, thank you. And a holiday gift to thousands of convicted marijuana users today. President Biden announcing a federal pardon to anyone who's faced charges for use and possession of marijuana, but does not apply to those who have been jailed for selling the drug. He says it is time to make the promise of equal justice a reality. Biden is calling on governors and local leaders to wipe out minor marijuana convictions in their jurisdictions. He's also granting clemency to 11 people serving disproportionately long sentences for nonviolent drug offenses. A new executive order lets the Treasury Department target financial institutions that help Russia's defense. President Biden signing the order today after recently signaling he could try to cut back the country's ability to access resources. The U.S. assessment shows Russia has already lost more than 13,000 pieces of equipment. And we're learning more about the mass shooting at a university in Prague, but investigators are still trying to figure out the motive here. 14 people killed, 25 more injured by the gunman who was a student at the university. International student Jacob Wiseman barricaded in his classroom to survive. He is still in disbelief.
I lived in the U.S. for a very long time, and I would have, if it were to happen anywhere, it would have happened in the U.S. But now it's spreading like a disease, to Europe as well, like this copycat mentality.
And the death toll could still rise. Police say the shooter took his own life. Investigators don't believe there's any link to terrorism or any particular ideology. The calls for Harvard's president to step down are growing louder as more allegations of plagiarism have surfaced. National correspondent Janae Bowens has the details on the fallout.
The problems for Harvard University's president, Claudine Gay, keep getting bigger. First, it was calls to oust her for her remarks on how anti-Semitism is handled on her campus. Now, allegations of plagiarism, and the claims keep coming. Reports show she's accused of over 40 allegations of plagiarism. For example, in this academic piece from Gay, it says since the 1950s, the re-election rate for incumbent House members has rarely dipped below 90%. You can see it's nearly identical to prominent scholar and Vanderbilt University professor Dr. Carol Swain's work.
She plagiarized my work as well as several other people.
Now, Harvard's policy says if students are caught plagiarizing, they could be subject to disciplinary action and even asked to leave the school. According to reporters for Harvard's student paper, some of Gay's academic papers appear to have incidents of inadequate citation, but they stop at calling it plagiarism.
And the corporation and the independent panel both said that they did not find evidence that that was the case.
Last week, Gay submitted corrections to 2 scholarly articles published in 2001 and 2017. This week, she requested 3 new corrections to her 1997 PhD dissertation. But Swain says Gay is getting special treatment.
DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion regime, this billion-dollar industry, they're more concerned with having token minorities with the right pedigree in position than they are in protecting their brand and the brand of the Ivy League, which is already in the toilet.
Sentiments echoed by some of Harvard's donors. Hedge fund manager Bill Ackman criticized Harvard's board, saying in part, they have concluded that if they fired President Gay, Harvard's first black president, they would be canceled and deemed racist. Gay denies plagiarizing, saying, quote, I stand by the integrity of my scholarship. In Washington, I'm Janae Bowens.
Well, coming up as 2023 nears its end, we're going to look into newly released inflation numbers and what they mean for your wallet in the new year. Then, what has some experts concerned about a new COVID variant that is rapidly spreading across the U.S.? Plus, a 20,000-pound Civil War artillery piece reappearing after vanishing. The remarkable story when we come back. "2023 has been a year of high prices and high interest rates, but a recession, despite economists' fears earlier in the year, was largely avoided thanks to a strong jobs market and robust consumer spending." National correspondent Atral Nashar has a look at the final inflation data of the year and what it means for your 2024 budget.
When it comes to inflation, 2023 is ending on a low note, and that's a good thing. According to a gauge the Federal Reserve watches closest, the year started out with a 5.3% year-over-year inflation rate. 2023 is ending with that figure down to 2.6% based on data released Friday by the Commerce Department.
Thinking back to a year ago, that consensus was we couldn't get to where we are today on inflation without a spike in unemployment and a recession, but the unemployment rate's been below 4% for 22 months running now.
When volatile food and energy prices are taken out of the equation, the inflation rate is slightly higher, 3.2%. The Fed wants to see that at 2%, meaning their high interest rates could stick around for a while. Looking at inflation month to month, costs actually went down. That hasn't happened since spring of 2020. But when it comes to consumer sentiment, there's still a ways to go before people feel good again.
People are a little bit more careful about what they're spending their money on these days.
The latest poll from The Economist and YouGov finds only 30% of adults rate the economy as good or excellent. 26% said fair and 42% said poor. Though polls like this show people feel uneasy about current conditions, they're not necessarily behaving like it. You've heard of doom scrolling. How about doom spending? 27% of Americans say they spend money to cope with stress, despite their concerns about the economy or their own personal debt. It's adding to the overall robust consumer spending that's beaten expectations this year, pleasantly surprising business owners like at this shoe store in Wisconsin on Black Friday.
People are talking about the economy not being as strong, but we were really blown away that our business gained so much.
As for what's in store for 2024, the Fed forecasts the rate of inflation will keep declining, meaning prices will still rise, but it gives Americans a better chance at keeping up. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
A new COVID variant called JN.1 is making up for almost half of the cases now seen in the U.S. The CDC released this estimate today as the variant quickly spreads across the country. Researchers have not reported symptoms that are different or worse than other strains, but some are concerned that it could be more contagious because of its extra mutations. Meantime, the Biden administration is moving forward on its clean energy goals, releasing a major proposal today for giving billions of dollars in tax credits to hydrogen producers. It's part of an effort to further develop an industry that could be an alternative to fossil fuels. Hydrogen is a potential energy source for parts of the economy that are difficult to electrify. Fast and Furious actor Vin Diesel responding today to allegations of sexual battery. The franchise star saying he categorically denies the claims made by his former assistant. The civil suit alleges the actor forced himself onto her and ignored clear statements of non-consent. In addition to sexual battery, the suit also alleges negligent supervision and wrongful termination. The former assistant is seeking a civil penalty of $10,000 for each violation. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter to you. And we begin in Baltimore, where more guns have been found in the classroom.
At Dunbar High School, no one can explain how 3 guns believed to be loaded turned up at the school.
I mean, that's unacceptable.
Former Baltimore Mayor Jack Young volunteers at Dunbar, where he says security is tight.
They come in through our scanners, and we even had the wands to wand them too. So how they got them in there, I really don't know. I really don't know how it got in there, because we do a thorough job of making sure that we screen everybody to come into the school.
In October, bullets were fired at a Dunbar High School football game. Police arrested a 15-year-old for the injury of a 12-year-old boy. And in September, police arrested 2 more students for firing a gun that shattered a Dunbar cafeteria window.
But if you were to talk to any parents in these neighborhoods, we all are fearful of our kids going to school.
During the holidays, Sergeant Lee Darnell with the Pitt County Sheriff's Office tells me it's nice to know your house will be safe if you're celebrating elsewhere. He says programs like this are what the Sheriff's Office is for.
You know, we never stop, and we're ever vigilant. And at the holidays, we know the criminals don't stop either. So Christmas morning, Christmas night, we will be out there. We will be in your neighborhoods. We will be keeping an eye on your houses.
Here in Pitt County, Sergeant Darnell tells me requests for house checks are most common during times where vacations ramp up.
It does pick up some during the holidays, and hopefully by letting folks know that we offer this service, it will pick up during these times as well. We just want people to have that peace of mind.
This is where the Larry H. Miller Company, MLB owner in waiting, wants to play ball. The Power District on North Temple.
Why is North Temple the place?
It's really exciting, and the reasons really are very apparent.
Amanda Covington, Miller Company spokeswoman, went to bat for nearly 100 acres of location.
It's strategically placed right between downtown Salt Lake City and the International Airport.
North Temple is an incredible opportunity zone.
State Senator Luz Escamilla says the site has hits and few errors. But what about the ballpark we already have, slated by the Millers to close, in a neighborhood which felt that decision was a curveball which struck to the heart?
Many of us moved here because we loved the dynamism and opportunity of fans and activity and the ambiance and also the economic potential of a stadium. That's why we're here.
Coming up, the incredible story of how a rare Civil War artifact resurfaced after going missing for 25 years. We'll be right back. Can a rare artifact weighing 10 tons simply just vanish? It literally happened. Our national investigative correspondent brought you the story 2 years ago of how a 20,000-pound Civil War artillery piece disappeared from public display 25 years ago, and nobody even realized it. Now it's been found. Mark Hyman has this remarkable story in tonight's Inside Your World Investigates.
In your wildest dreams, did you think that somebody would find that?
No.
Retired Admiral Sam Cox is the director of Navy history. We met with him more than 2 years ago when we were trying to locate a 10-ton naval mortar identical to this one used during the Civil War. The mere existence of this rare artifact was a shock to him.
You were surprised because you didn't know this mortar still existed, let alone it disappeared.
It had never come to my attention until you brought it to my attention, so I thank you for that.
We first learned of this artillery piece, known as a Seacoast mortar, from several caretakers who volunteer at Dayton, Ohio's Old Greencastle Cemetery, a resting place for approximately 300 veterans dating all the way back to the American Revolution. It sat in the cemetery for nearly a century. Air Force veteran Fred Lynch was passionate about the mortar's disappearance.
The Seacoast mortar was a grave marker honoring all of the veterans here, and it was meant to stay here.
The Navy loaned the mortar to the Dayton community more than a century ago. In 1998, cemetery officials sold it to a private collector from Allentown, Pennsylvania. Years later, it was sold again, and no one wanted to spill the beans on where it went. Using Google Earth, we examined a suspected location and found where the mortar was in 2016. It was gone 3 years later after it was sold the second time. We called public museums, private collectors, experts, and an auctioneer who specializes in cannon sales looking for the mortar. Then Admiral Cox gave us great news. The mortar was found by a member of the public.
You were visiting a museum and something caught your attention. What was that?
It was a piece of Civil War ordnance, what's known as a 13-inch seacoast mortar, and it was a piece of ordnance of interest because it had gone missing.
Todd Creekman is a retired Navy captain. He's also a Civil War history buff.
So how did you know that this thing was missing?
I knew because of the piece that you did in late 2021.
The mortar, identical to the one. Months after watching our news story, Captain Creekman visited a private artillery museum. Tucked into the back was a seacoast mortar. And he wondered, was it the missing one?
Cast into this huge piece of iron when it was made 150 plus years ago was a serial number that in the records that you had uncovered showed that it had been the one loaned by the Navy to Dayton all those years ago.
So does this story have a happy ending?
I think it does. Yeah, we found it. In the meantime, it's in a good place where it is. Everybody's happy.
For Inside Your World Investigates, I'm Mark Hyman in Washington, D.C.
Coming up, you've most likely heard her music, especially around this time of year. We're going to give you an inside look at Mariah Carey's White House visit. We'll be right back. To some, she's Mariah Carey. To others, she's the hitmaker behind the song All I Want for Christmas Is You, the one that plays on repeat in your head, now a holiday classic. That singer, she stopped by the White House last week to meet with President Biden and Vice President Harris. She shared photos of her meeting, the president showing Carey and her 12-year-old twins at the White House Christmas decorative party with, of course, her music playing in the background. And seven-time Olympic medalist Simone Biles named Female Athlete of the Year by the Associated Press. Probably no shock there to you. The 26-year-old gymnast received the honor after taking a 2-year hiatus following the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Biles' triumphant return to the mat this year included her record 8th U.S. national championship and 6th world all-around gold, cementing her title as the most decorated gymnast. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage of America's top stories. Safe travels to those of you heading home, and happy holidays to you all. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.